In an age where comparison is currency and noise drowns the soul, the greatest rebellion is silence, and the greatest work is within. You were not born to be a replica of the world's projections. You were born to become what only you can become. But to do so, you must withdraw your gaze from the illusions of others and turn inward. Just focus on yourself. This is not selfishness. It is soul work. It is the sacred act of becoming whole. When you find yourself constantly annoyed by someone's arrogance, troubled by another's neediness, or captivated by someone's brilliance, pause, not to judge them, but to reflect on the source of your reaction. What disturbs or dazzles us in others often has nothing to do with them. It is, more often, a projection of some part of ourselves, cast like a shadow onto the canvas of the external world. The psyche, when unobserved, has a cunning way of displacing what it cannot face within. It takes the disowned aspects of your personality, the parts you were told were unworthy, shameful, too much or not enough, and externalizes them. You then encounter these traits not within your own consciousness, but in the people around you. You may say, "I cannot stand how selfish he is," when in truth, a part of you has long been denied the right to assert its own needs. You might despise someone's passivity because it mirrors a vulnerability you were never allowed to express. Or perhaps, you place someone on a pedestal, enamored with their strength, their confidence, their artistry, when really, you are in awe of the potential you have yet to own in yourself. To withdraw the projections is to undertake one of the most difficult yet transformative tasks of inner life. It requires you to take back the energy you've unknowingly invested in the world outside. It is to admit, "This thing I cannot tolerate in another. It lives in me. This quality I admire to the point of obsession. I have buried it within myself." You begin to unearth the exiled parts of your own psyche. You reclaim the fragments you've scattered across your relationships, your enemies, your idols. This process does not mean others are without fault. People do behave selfishly, they do act with cruelty or ignorance, but your intense emotional reaction is the compass pointing inward. It says more about your inner world than about their character. It is not the event that wounds you. It is what the event awakens in your unconscious that hurts. When you stop blaming and start integrating, you reclaim your power. You no longer live as a puppet of unprocessed feelings. You become whole. You begin to see people as they are, not as distorted echoes of your own fragmentation. And more importantly, you begin to see yourself as you truly are, a being of complexity, contradiction, and depth, capable of holding the full spectrum of light and shadow. This is what it means to focus on yourself, not by self-absorption, but by radical honesty. When you withdraw the projections, you no longer walk through the world blindfolded by your own illusions. You begin to see clearly, you begin to live consciously, you begin the work of becoming real. To focus on yourself in any true and lasting way, you must be willing to descend, down into the depths of your own soul, into the places you have denied, avoided, or disowned. This descent is not glamorous. It is not applauded. It does not come with likes, approval, or admiration, but it is necessary, because within the darkness of your psyche lives what has been cast aside, the rejected parts of your nature, the emotions you were told not to feel, the truths you were too afraid to admit. This is the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is simply unknown. It is the container of all that you are but have not yet owned. It is the aggression you suppress to appear kind, the sexuality you deny to appear pure, the ambition you mute to appear humble, the rage you lock away to remain accepted. The shadow carries not only your wounds but also your power. It holds the gold of your authentic self, buried under years of conditioning and fear. To embrace the shadow is to look into the mirror without flinching. It is to admit, yes, I am capable of jealousy. Yes, I have been cruel. Yes, I want to be seen, admired, envied. Yes, I have moments of arrogance, of shame, of deceit. And yes, I also possess a depth of love, strength, insight, and creativity that I have not dared to express. The act of embracing the shadow is not about indulging in destructive behavior. It is about owning what is already there, so that it no longer controls you from the dark. Most people wear masks. They curate an image of who they think they should be: polite, successful, moral, likable. But this mask is thin, beneath it the shadow waits. And when ignored for too long, it bursts through passive aggression, self-sabotage, addiction, depression, or sudden eruptions of rage. The more you run from the shadow, the more power it gains. The more you try to be only good, the more you become split within. True focus on yourself is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. Wholeness requires that you gather the parts of yourself you have left behind. The scared child, the manipulator, the rebel, the addict, the loner, the competitor, these parts are not enemies. They are orphaned selves waiting to be seen, understood, and integrated. When you sit with your shadow instead of fleeing from it, you transform. You stop being at war with yourself. This inner reconciliation brings a peace the world cannot offer. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer live under the tyranny of your image. You become real. Others may not understand this transformation because you will no longer fit neatly into the categories they use to define people. But you will know freedom, the kind that comes only when you have walked through your own darkness and emerged with the treasure of self-knowledge. Embracing the shadow is the passage through which the soul becomes sovereign. It is the path of depth, maturity, and authenticity. And it begins when you stop asking, "How do I appear?" and start asking, "Who am I, really, when no one is watching?" That answer lives in your shadow, and when you embrace it, you reclaim not only your truth, but your life. To cultivate inner sovereignty is to become the ruler of your own inner world, to no longer be governed by the fleeting opinions of others, the trends of the moment, or the unexamined expectations handed down to you by family, culture, and society. It is the slow, deliberate process of retrieving your authority from all the places you've given it away, and it begins the moment you decide to stop outsourcing your worth. So many live in quiet slavery, not to a person, but to perception. They dress for approval, they speak to be accepted, they think not for understanding, but for performance. Their lives are a series of reactions, not responses. Their choices are based on optics, not authenticity. And beneath this, they feel the vague ache of being unanchored, because they have no real relationship with their own center. Without sovereignty, the self becomes fragmented, tossed about by every wave of opinion, every whisper of judgment, every fear of rejection. To reclaim your sovereignty, you must learn to sit with yourself long enough to hear your own voice, not the loud inner critic, not the echo of others, but the deeper voice that comes from stillness. This voice doesn't shout. It doesn't flatter. It speaks quietly, truthfully, and when you begin to listen, you will start to feel the difference between what is real and what is performance. You will begin to ask, "Am I doing this because I believe in it? Or because I want to be liked? Am I living my truth or someone else's script?" The sovereign self is not loud. It is not arrogant. It does not need to prove. It simply knows. It has an inner gravity that cannot be moved by gossip, praise, or rejection. It stands rooted not in stubbornness, but in clarity. And that clarity comes only from inner work, from facing your fears, naming your needs, honoring your intuition, and living in accordance with your deepest values, not your momentary emotions. This is not a fast process. Inner sovereignty is not built in a weekend or through a slogan. It is forged in solitude, in silence, in the spaces where you confront your dependencies, emotional, psychological, even spiritual. Where you ask yourself, what have I relied on to feel valuable? Who have I made into my authority figure? Whose love or attention have I made into my God? And then, little by little, you begin the work of taking that power back, not to become isolated, but to become grounded. A sovereign person is not immune to doubt, fear, or failure, but they do not live defined by them. They have made peace with being misunderstood. They have given up the need to convince. They trust the unfolding of their own path, even when no one applauds it. They are loyal to their inner compass more than to the collective noise, and because of this, they walk with a quiet dignity that cannot be imitated. It can only be earned. To cultivate inner sovereignty is to become a true adult in the deepest sense, not merely by age, but by integration. It is to stand in the center of your own being and say, "This is who I am. This is what I value. This is how I will live, whether or not the world understands it. And when you arrive at that place, you will find that external chaos no longer destabilizes you. Because you have built a kingdom within, one that no one can take from you. To follow the threads of meaning is to live in alignment with something deeper than logic, louder than routine, and more enduring than success as defined by the world. It is to listen for the subtle signals that whisper from the soul rather than obeying the loud commands of the ego. In a culture obsessed with productivity, comparison, and superficial goals, this path is often invisible. Yet it is the only path that leads to true fulfillment, not the fleeting high of external achievement, but the quiet resonance of a life lived authentically, from the inside out. Meaning does not shout. It shows itself through symbols, through synchronicities, through the quiet ache you feel when you're not living in accordance with who you truly are. It might appear as a dream that lingers in your memory, strange and powerful. It might come in the form of a repeated image, an unexpected moment of déjà vu, or an inexplicable pull towards something you can't quite explain. These are not random. They are the soul's way of guiding you through metaphor, not instruction. And to follow them, you must develop a different kind of perception, one that values inner resonance over outer approval. The path of meaning is not a straight line, it is more like a spiral. You circle around themes, patterns, questions that refuse to go away. You revisit childhood passions, unanswered longings, moments of quiet inspiration that the world told you to discard, but those moments are not mistakes, they are invitations. The deeper self speaks not through pressure, but through persistent curiosity. That book you keep wanting to read, that skill you've long wanted to learn, that conversation that haunts you, these are threads. They are not accidents. They are part of your inner myth. But to follow these threads, you must be willing to step off the highway of collective ambition. You must learn to tolerate the uncertainty of not having a map. The world may not understand why you leave a stable job to pursue something more aligned with your spirit. You yourself may doubt it. The rational mind will fight you with questions. What if I fail? What if this goes nowhere? What if no one else sees the value in this? And yet, if you are honest, you know that to ignore the pull would be a deeper failure, the kind that erodes your vitality over time. There is no formula for meaning. What moves your soul may seem strange, even irrational to others, but that is the very sign you are on the right path. The thread of meaning is personal. It cannot be outsourced, crowdsourced, or borrowed. It must be felt. It must be lived, and often, it is only in hindsight that you see the design. The way certain events, people, losses, and longings were all part of a larger pattern guiding you home to yourself. Following meaning requires courage, not the bold, dramatic kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that allows you to say no when it would be easier to say yes, or to say yes when fear screams no. It is the courage to stay with the question rather than rush to an answer. The willingness to live in the in-between spaces where certainty disappears and something sacred begins to form. In the end, meaning is not a place you reach. It is a way you walk. It is how you relate to the world, attuned, awake, receptive. It is how you listen to your dreams, how you pay attention to what stirs your heart, how you honor what calls you, even when no one else understands. A life built on meaning is not always easy, but it is always rich. It does not avoid suffering, but it gives suffering shape. It weaves beauty from pain, insight from struggle, and purpose from silence. When you follow the threads of meaning, you do not become someone else. You become more fully yourself. And that is the deepest success there is. To live in depth and not in surface is to resist the relentless pull of modern life toward speed, noise, and shallow distraction. It is to root yourself in stillness, intention, and substance in a world addicted to novelty and appearance. The surface is where masks are worn, where trends change by the hour, where conversations skim across the top of things but never penetrate. It is where we scroll endlessly, speak without truly saying anything, and measure worth by visibility. But the soul does not live on the surface. The soul lives in depth. Depth is not glamorous. It is not immediately profitable. It often goes unnoticed by those who seek only spectacle. to live in depth requires you to slow down in a culture that rewards haste. It requires silence in a world that fears quiet. It means choosing quality over quantity, substance over style, and presence over performance. It means resisting the temptation to be everywhere at once, and instead being fully where you are. When you live in depth, your life becomes more about what is real than what is seen. Depth is not about hiding from the world. It is about encountering it more fully. When you live in depth, you listen longer. You speak more truthfully. You observe what others miss. You start to notice the layers beneath things, the emotion beneath the words, the longing behind the anger, the soul behind the image. You don't just hear someone, you feel them. You don't just see beauty, you sense its origin. You begin to live from a place that is not reactive, but rooted. To live in depth is to have fewer but richer relationships. You are not interested in accumulating contacts, likes, or followers. You are interested in connection, in resonance, in conversations that shake you, change you, strip away your illusions. You understand that one honest friend is worth more than 100 superficial alliances. You begin to value the people who make you feel more real, not more important. Living in depth also means returning to the slowness of real transformation. You no longer expect instant results or overnight clarity. You understand that things take time. Healing, understanding, mastery. The deep things grow like roots, not fireworks. You no longer chase constant stimulation or jump from one goal to the next out of restlessness. You are willing to stay with something, to let it unfold, to let it teach you. In the depths, you also meet yourself. Not the curated self you show the world, but the one you discover in solitude. Here, you are not a brand, a persona, or a performance. You are a mystery unfolding. In this space, you do not need to have all the answers. You are not rushing to become someone. You are returning to who you've always been beneath the layers of expectation. Living in depth requires boundaries. It requires saying no to what is hollow, distracting, or draining. You begin to curate your inner world as carefully as you once curated your image. You seek out the books, art, spaces, and souls that nourish something ancient in you. You spend time in reflection, in nature, in wonder. You understand that wisdom does not come from constant movement, but from stillness and contemplation. This life is not fast, but it is rich. It does not make you famous, but it makes you whole. It does not protect you from pain, but it teaches you how to feel it in a way that transforms rather than destroys. And most importantly, it makes you unshakable, not because you are invulnerable, but because you are deeply anchored. To live in depth is to choose meaning over momentum, essence over image, truth over comfort. It is to make your life an inward journey, not a constant exhibition. And though the world may never applaud you for it, your soul will recognize the truth of it. It will rest, it will breathe, and it will finally be home. The journey of focusing on yourself is the sacred art of becoming. It is not easy. It demands solitude, courage, and the willingness to feel deeply. But it is the only path that leads to freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to become who you truly are. So close your eyes to the world and open them to your soul. The work begins now. Just focus on yourself.